So before we go any further in the material exercises and lessons, we need to discuss rendering because there's going to be reflectivity and other things involved. You need to be able to render things to see how they work. So how are we going to do that? I'm going to tell you in this video the settings that I'm using so that you can attempt to get the similar results without certain issues. And then we're going to have a different video that just generally talks about some rendering stuff. So my render settings. First of all, I'm using Viewport 2.0 here, which would allow me to use Maya software. So the simplest, easiest, no watermarky kind of rendering situation. It's not really what people use in professional situation, but there you have it. The other thing I need to do is I need to go over to where it says modeling over here, and I actually need to turn on a rendering um, menu set. And I would go to render and then render settings. Now, if we take a close look at this, it says render using and then Maya software, but then there's some other things. There used to be Mental Ray. If you've got an old version of Maya, you might have Mental Ray installed. Arnold Renderer is something a lot of people are using right now. However, licensing issues make that difficult to work at from home. So there are also two tabs. A common one, which is across all renderers, and then whatever one you have specifically on here. So the common tab is where you would set up things like what to call your render. So I'm calling mine test, although I'm not really saving them. You can select other things like instead of IFF, a JPEG or other things. For some reason, mine keeps switching back to IFF. It might be because I have a student version. I'm not sure at this moment. But that's the only file output option. If we had an animation in here, you could select a frame range. We do not have that. And then if we twirl down some of these other things, for these lessons, I'm using HD 540, which is not a very big image. That's so we can kind of keep things moving because rendering takes time. And if you have something going up to HD 1080, that's going to be longer. That's going to take a much longer time to render. And then you have all the usual like pixel settings here, but I'm just sticking with a smaller size so it can render quickly. Let's see, I don't think there's any other options in here. No, so there's no other options on the comment tab we have to worry about. Maya software. So what you can do is you can go to quality and then it goes to preview, I think, at first. So if you set this to production, it brings up basically all of the settings to a higher quality, right? So if we're looking at materials, we can't have like a really low res situation going on here. If things are still looking noisy after we fix the other settings I'm going to show you, the number of samples is something you could turn up. Now that does up your render time, but it can make things look a little bit nicer. If we scroll down here, the other thing I did is I turned on ray tracing. So if we want reflections, if we want shadows, if we want nice things, we need something called ray tracing, which is the thing that says, okay, the light is here and then it bounced off here and then it went there. So if you have any kind of reflections, you need to turn ray tracing on. It has someone for reflections, refractions, and shadows. I know in my scene I don't have any refractions. I don't know. It might have an optimization thing that turns this off automatically if there are no refractions, but you can if you're really looking to make things go quicker. You can turn these down a little bit. They don't necessarily have to be all the way up to 10. Depending on what you're doing. And then the rest we are going to leave as is. So we're going to close that for now. And then there's a button up here that says IPR render. Now the first time it renders is probably not going to work right. I've been having that problem and it pops up. Oh, it popped it up on my other monitor. There we go. It pops up something that is, oh, whoops. Standby. Accidentally docked the image. We don't want that. So this is like a render view and it stays open and you can kind of like re-render things as you change your settings. But my problem I've been having is for some reason it ignores ray tracing the first time I press the button. And so then I'm like, there's a button over here which you can press again and it should take a moment. If you get an image right away, it's not working. So it tells me my render time here is 5 seconds. Now, if we look at this image, we'll notice that this is nice and shiny, and these things are looking pretty nice, but the shadows, anywhere there's a cast shadow, it's looking pretty terrible. The reflections here look nice, but the shadows look terrible. This is not what this should look like. This setting, I'm going to bring this off over here for a moment, is actually in the lights. So I'm going to pull my outliner, which is under Windows Outliner, and I'm just going to select my lights through here because I made them invisible. I don't want to touch them. I have two lights in here, an area light and a directional light, and we're normally working up here in the lights. Right, so you look at it here and it's got like, oh, intensity and decay rate and everything. We need to go to shadows. And specifically, we need to scroll down to where it says Ray Trace Shadow Attributes. And I need to up this to, we're going to say 3. And then I'm going to go to the directional light and I'm going to turn that up a little bit. I'm also going to change the light angle to, yeah, 0.2, soften it up a little bit. Or is it 2? Hold on. Yeah, we're going to do 0.2. And when I do that, I'm going to re-render this, but I'm actually going to do a little bit of a trick. I'm going to drag select this area, and if I click this button, it lets me render just that. And so I can see if it helped. And we can see, oh my goodness, it did. Look how much nicer that looks. And the more that we up these shadow rays, the more nicer it looks. So I could put this up to 10 for both lights. Sorry, I have lots of windows here. This is rendering. And then I drag select this again, and I say re-render. And it's gonna, you can see it's taken a little bit longer. I have a pretty good computer. I am also recording my screen. Whoa, that just, you can see it right here. Look at the difference from here to here, right? It's not even close. But 10 seems extreme for the lessons. So I was settling in at 4 for both the lights, which was, it made them good enough. It made it good enough for like what we're trying to look at. All right, so if you have this file, the lights should already be set up for rendering. So both the lights should be set to this amount of shadow rays, and the one that has a light angle on it should be all set and ready to go. And the render settings should be set to Maya software, production quality, with ray tracing turned on. And this keeps going back and forth, if you are working on your own file and you're looking for issues, those are the places where you want to look to make changes.